It is Wednesday, April 10th, 6:01 p.m. We'll be starting the Provo City Planning Commission hearing. We'll start with a Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Robert Knudsen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and read in. Wait, no. I really want to get out of here, I guess. We'll start with a roll call. Starting at the left, state your name and if you have any conflicts.
Barbie DeSoto, no conflicts.
Andrew South, no conflicts.
Lisa Jensen, no conflicts.
Robert Knudsen, no conflicts.
Jeff Whitlock, no conflicts.
Melissa Kendall, no conflicts.
Jonathan Hill, no conflicts.
And Daniel Gonzalez, no conflicts. We'll go ahead and read item number 1 and 2 into the. Sorry. Let me start off with a little preface. Although this is a public hearing, only the presenters and those invited by the commission may speak or ask questions unless otherwise invited by the chair. Please wait to speak until called on. When speaking, please be sure to speak into the microphone so that the record is clear. Please state your name and city of residence for the record. Please limit side conversations as they interfere with the audio recording. If you need to have a side conversation, please step out of the chambers. That same goes if there's questions that you just feel that you need to get out to the commission and we can't address them because of decorum rules, please see one of our planning staff members. Do not attempt to interrupt or speak over others. Intimidating or threatening speech or behavior will not be tolerated at any time. Please refrain from clapping, cheering, booing, or being otherwise disruptive during the hearing. Item number 1, David Bragonje requests a zone map amendment from the A15 zone, agricultural, to the Pro A10 Arbors on the Avenue zone in order to construct a new 66 unit condo building located approximately 5610 North University Avenue, North Timpview neighborhood. And item number 2, David Bragonje requests concept plan approval for a new 66 unit condo building in a proposed Pro A110 Arbors on the Avenue zone located approximately at 5610 North University Avenue, North Timpview neighborhood. Our staff member, Aaron Ardmore, will be presenting.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. So just to orient you with what we're looking at tonight, the property is up here at the mouth of the canyon on the east side of University Avenue, just across from 5600 North. You may be familiar with this site as it had a gravel pit back in 2018. And it's just kind of sat vacant since. The zoning on the property, as you alluded to in the notice language, is mostly agricultural. There is some open space preservation and recreation zone in there as well. That's the lighter blue color. So the proposal is this, the 66 unit 4-level residential condo building. So this is the site plan in context with the area to kind of show how that would look on the land and with surrounding uses. Here is the site plan, a little bit more zoomed in. This was also in your packets. So the access coming in from the south to surface parking, and also there'd be 4 ingress and egress to the underground parking for the project. There's amenities included in the proposal: a dog park, lots of open landscape, and trail connections to the east. outdoor patios, and gathering areas for the residents as well. Here are some images. I believe the applicant's slides will have additional images for you, but this is helpful to see it in context from University Avenue, headed north and south as it relates to the hillside and the slopes that are there. The reason I'm not going too much into the details of the project, as you have seen in your packets, is there is one major issue with this and other projects along Freedom and University with sewer capacity. So in your packets, you received some content about zoned properties, properties that have established rights through the zoning. Were calculated into the sewer constraints down in those circled areas, the P15 through P16, P18, P13. Those are constraints to the sewer system. For any additional units that weren't anticipated in the zoning and in the general plan, there are issues with being able to service those. That is essentially the main issue that led to staff's recommendation of denial. If we can't service the proposal, it seems to be an untimely request until those improvements are made down the line in these sections. And as you saw in your packet, those are at least 10 years out based on the budgeting and CIP for public works. We do have David Day here to address those sewer issues in more detail, more knowledgeable source than I am, of course. That is what I prepared for the presentation. However, there was a comment that came in late today to our public hearings email that I wanted to read into the record, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
This is from Will Taylor. He writes, I oppose this project unless there's a very solid plan to address the traffic issue it will create with it being in a really weird location. The hill coming down canyon, if you are pulling out from Indian Trailhead, it is hard to see the cars coming down, not to mention they go fast. It is a blind hill, but when I see the land for this project, I don't see how this project would have any access except right onto Canyon Road, University Avenue, since that is the merging point and traffic is going 50 miles per hour on average to get up to speed on that stretch. Some serious traffic engineering needs to be done and presented before any approvals are given. Again, that's Will Taylor's email from today. And I think those are kind of secondary issues that could be worked out through staff review, through a traffic study and all those typical things. But it is for the sewer capacity issue that is kind of overriding any of those reviews or details at this point. But that is all I have, unless you have any questions for me before, or David Day.
I have some questions.
Yeah.
What does the general plan map show for this property?
The general plan shows partially residential, partially agricultural. Most of the project area is in a residential designation. As you go more north and east, it's agricultural designation.
Okay. I had a question about something in the trunk line letter that I think you could address. I don't think it's a technical question. There's a list of properties at the bottom of the first page of that letter that says they're still in the planning phases, but haven't received approval. And so my question is, if those properties, those projects aren't approved yet, aren't they technically at the same stage in the process as the project that we're looking at today, or no?
The difference is that they're already zoned. So
So they're already zoned correctly.
The
They don't
Harris
have to
Building and
ask for
Blue
that.
Haven are in the downtown zones, so they're entitled.
Okay.
The Mill Race Apartments is in the Pro Zone, which is entitled, and Legacy Village Phase 2 is in the LDR zone already, which would be entitled for their phase
And
2.
I'm assuming that that's because the capacity of that trunk line took the zoning into effect to sort of calculate what to expect.
Yeah, that's how they analyze supply and demand based on the zoning and general plan.
Okay, so then my last two questions go together. I was thinking to myself, how can you say no development here without having to compensate a property owner somehow? We're not actually saying never no development. We're saying wait till the infrastructure. I'm assuming that the developer could say, I want to pay to put the infrastructure in, and it would be just fine. But that's not something we would ask them to do.
Right. There is that opportunity
Okay.
to pay the millions of dollars.
Yeah.
There's also the entitled, they could do a R1, with the acreage, I think it's like 12, 16 units.
Without asking for the zone
Something
change.
like that.
Okay.
Which the sewer could take in. But obviously that's not what they're asking.
Okay, so does this mean there's no high density of projects allowed in Northeast Provo for now, or just at this location because they'd be asking for a zone change?
Along the University Avenue and Freedom Boulevard corridors that feed into this same line, from my understanding, David could correct me if I'm wrong, any rezones to increased density would be problematic.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hill.
There it goes. So I don't know if this is better for David or you, but I'm looking at this map of the needed improvements. If we can go to that slide. And some of these, I'm just wondering why they would affect the capacity on here. Like P16 looks like it's on a side. It's not actually part of it. And only part of P18 looks like it's actually involved. The other part is off to the side. So I'm wondering if, for example, what would be the true cost to bring this one up to allow the capacity here?
I'll turn to David for that.
Thank you, David Day with Public Works. Your question is
Let's start with P16. How does that help improve capacity along the trunk line, since it's a branch off the side?
Yeah, that's a good point. So along that trunk line, we were just showing all of the improvements that happen. That P16 would be more of an east improvement, whereas the 15, 18, and 13 would be a main line coming down to the.
And am I right thinking it's only part of the budget that was put in here for 18, because there's also this side part on BYU campus?
Over on the BYU area. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. You've pointed out all those details that you may not see on the surface here, but clearly the 13 and 15 are 100% main line, and then the percentage of 18, I'm guessing 25% of that cost would be on the main line.
So it looks like it'd be about 4 million probably to bring that up. Okay.
Yeah, it's.
And those are 2021 numbers. So.
Yeah,
Plus
they're
inflation.
21 numbers, so we've probably seen a 20% increase on that, and in our costs that we're seeing on our projects that we're doing now, we're running out of money, and so these sort of projects would be on our 10-year plan, and maybe like on the 10th year of the 10-year plan,
right?
Just because we have so many other needs. We're building the new sewer treatment plant, which is escalated in cost as it's being built. So all those things come out of the same budget. So we just have to program out so that we can pay for things as we go. And these improvements would be postponed until some of the more critical things were done.
I have a couple quick questions just to understand. So the concern is primarily with sewage, so that's waste.
Yeah, the wastewater.
Wastewater.
And the hard thing about this project is at the very top end. If it was down at the bottom end, then we'd just be talking about the project P13. But we're talking about 3 projects there, so.
And then just again, forgive me a couple of ignorant questions. So it's it's wastewater issue. What would prevent the applicant from doing alternatives like septic or something like that?
Well, we don't allow septic.
It's not allowed.
in Provo because of water quality. As that septic penetrates into the ground, it contaminates the well water that we pump out. So we don't want that happening. And so Provo City has an ordinance that prohibits septic.
Okay, I have one final question. So this concern seems to be driven by planning to some degree because we have entitled zones that we know will grow and add units. Assuming if you were to like discard that variable and just kind of build this thing, would it immediately cause problems, or could we absorb it, but we're just worried about future additions based on existing entitlements?
Yeah, so as we monitor the levels of the wastewater that are coming down these lines, our people are seeing it reaching capacity. So once that happens, the fear is that you start surcharging back into the laterals that go into businesses and homes. You also have a problem with maybe a higher percentage of blockages in the main line. So we like to have a little bit of clear space in those pipes for surges and stuff like that. So when they start getting to that level, we start getting really nervous, and we like we are tonight. We're just saying we're out of capacity right now. In 10 years, we would say, hey, yeah, we're fine with the capacity, but until we get these projects completed, we would just say with what we have already entitled, we're out of the ability to add more.
So you're saying as of today, already in the pipes, when you're doing these inspections, we're already seeing times where they're full.
Well, so with what we're seeing and what we have already entitled, if we were to entitle more, then we would fear that we would have overflows.
Okay.
So there are a number of projects down the same corridor that have already got their zoning, and they could build, in the next couple of months and be completed without us saying whether or not they could have that zoning, because they already have it. It's just mainly an administrative approval going through the project plan. And so there's really no way to say, wait, you can't do that.
And then what is can you just describe the consequence of these you used some technical term I didn't fully understand, of like basically pushing it back to the sidelines or something like that. Can you explain what that is and actually the consequences of it?
So you have the main line of the sewer pipe, and then you have the laterals coming off of that. So you have the sewer coming from the homes or businesses, whatever it happens to be, that enters the sewer main, and then the main transports all of that in a large diameter pipe, like a 20-inch or a 12-inch, whatever it happens to be. Most of the laterals that come out are a 4-inch into the main. But as you fill that pipe up, those laterals come in at about 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. So it's just above the middle of the pipe. It comes in kind of on an angle. And so as you fill the pipe up, it starts approaching where those others come in, and then it tends to back charge up those laterals. And then those situations, we end up getting backups into the service line. So people would have possibly sewer in their basement or in their business, and we absolutely do not want that ever to happen. That's like the number one rule for sewer. So we don't like that to happen.
Thanks. That's a very helpful explanation.
I'm just looking to see if any other commissioners have questions for either Aaron or Mr. Day.
One.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
So Aaron, real quick, on the letter that you read, it seemed like the residents' concern was that the traffic would be coming straight into Canyon or University. That's not the case, right? The plan says that the road will go to the south and hook into an existing access road. So on those two roads, there's no additional
So yeah, so
entries, right?
if this was to move forward, the immediate connection would be off that access road. But I think from what I read, their point is that that's a pretty steep hill and that feeds right into Canyon Road, which is a fast moving stretch at this juncture as they're moving into University Avenue. That's what I got from that letter.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
So how many units are they currently entitled to? 14, 12, 14?
I believe it's between 12 and 16.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ardmore. Well, let's go ahead and have the applicant come up.
Hello. Thankful for your thoughtful questions. I appreciate that. Anyway, I'm David Bragonje. I'll be presenting here. Let me figure out how to work this slide. Oh, I'm from Cedar Hills too, in case I guess I was supposed to say. Oh, something happened. That's not the right button. Oh, there we go. Okay, this is a picture of the project here. I'm going to move through this pretty quick. Okay, I guess we know where it is. When I was at the community meeting, it seemed like they couldn't picture it. So here's a picture of the property so everyone knows exactly what we're talking about as far as where the property is at. You've seen that picture. Here's a picture. I became a part owner of the property in 2019. I know there's excavation and gravel pit operations before that. Since I've owned the property or been a partial owner of the property originally, we haven't done anything with it. So there's been no change while I've owned it. There used to be 8 owners of the property. They were all out of state. One of the first things I had to do was consolidate ownership. That's one reason not much has happened here in a long time, is because there's multiple owners spread across the country. Not much was going on with the property. Current state of the property is like this. There hasn't been changes, except there's been some dumping. I put up a no dumping sign. That seemed to have stopped it, but people have gone there and dumped some stuff. You can see there's a big tailing, I guess you will, from the gravel pit operation. That's the huge pile that's still there. That's the waste from the gravel pit. Here is, it was the end of 2019 when I became a part owner. 2022, I acquired the rest of the property. This is what I spent most of my time on in the beginning, 2021, 2022, probably too long on a road design. There is a plan. I'm not presenting this as something that's going to happen soon, but there is a plan to realign Canyon Road with University Road. Northern Engineering did a preliminary design of this, a 3D design. We did potholing to figure out where some of the water utilities are from 1930, some of the main water lines for the city go along Canyon Road right there. We needed to know where those are. So we have a concept plan of kind of what this would look like in the future. We needed that so we could figure out what could go there, what was buildable, where we could go. I think David Days, if you have any questions about that, he knows more than I do about it, but I know quite a bit. I have a lot of engineering plans on this. So even though this is just looks like this here, we have quite a bit of work done on this road, and we know more or less what it will look like in the future. Let me go back real quick. We met with UDOT. UDOT has done a traffic study here. They completed a traffic study back in July of 2022, I believe, is when they finished their design, or sorry, their traffic study. They've signed a joint corridor agreement with Provo City. So this is something official that's going to go in here at some point. There will be an intersection here. Also during this time, I worked with Tad McAllister. The substation that's right there close by, it's the Gillespie substation. That's planning to expand as well. That design work has been done. That's what you're seeing right here. There's some design work. It probably would have gone in already, but there's been a shortage of the equipment that they need to put in there. When we looked at that, the boundaries for the parcels that were here, there's 6 parcels that I own. The boundaries overlapped. They weren't right. You can see you can see here, this blue line right here is the fence, the northern fence along the substation. And I owned inside the substation here and inside the substation here. Me and the city in beginning of 2023 ordered a joint survey to be done, and then worked on realigning all these boundaries. The city also needed, or the power company, Provo City Power, they needed more room for their westward expansion of the substation, and also this access up here, because they know that the swoop is going in. Their plan is they're going to abandon their current access, and they're going to have a new access that goes up here, which also went through my property. So we worked with Tara, the city, and we in 2023, and we negotiated just across the table and came up with a new boundary. So this has all been fixed now. You can see our boundary now follows the fence line. This leaves room for the current expansion that is here. The city owns all of this property along here. I acquired some more right here that allowed me to have better access, with access I need off of Indian Trailhead Road. That was most of 2023. We worked on that. Also, there's 6 parcels right now. You can see that here it's showing 2. This line's not correct right here. This has been changed to up here more. That was one of the things that came out of the neighborhood meeting, is there was some concern about how much land was being requested to be rezoned. And so it's really just this lot 2 here that I'm looking to rezone. It's 4.17 acres is this lot 2 right here. Lot 1 would in the future need to be used for the redesign of Canyon Road, and lot 3 is, again, just property. It's less useful property up top. Bonneville Shoreline Trail goes through here. It's not, this area up here is not accessible from down below, except for the new trail that we propose to go up there. Just addressing real quick, that was one of the concerns that came out of the neighborhood meeting. The other was density. We had requested a high density residential zone. Later, in working with Aaron, we determined that that probably wouldn't be the best zone anyway. The pro zone that's being requested here, that's the same zone on University Avenue just to the south. It is a lower density than high density. I guess it's a medium density. Would you consider it medium? The previous one was 50 units per acre. This one's 24. So there was some concern that a much larger unit than what I'm proposing here could be built in the future. That's just not the case. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about, so I've kind of gone through a timeline here of of the work that I've been doing on the project over the last couple of years. These are infrastructure improvements that were already identified that need to happen in this area. For it to work. This spot here is kind of a dead zone for multiple utilities. The water line needs to be extended down Canyon Road and then connected across University. There is a line there that needs to be upgraded, but that would loop the system. The sewer, the whole time I worked on the sewer was never a concern. There's already a casting underneath the University. You can just stick the pipe under there. It's already there. And so sewer was the one issue I thought we didn't have with the property. Turns out that's the biggest one. That would need to happen though. That would connect from the trunk line over to that side of University. There's no sewer access or service over there. So as part of the project that would go in. I'm just pointing these out here. These were system-wide improvements that were already being proposed as part of the project. I felt like Provo City was getting a pretty good deal here with the improvements that were going to go in along with the project. Also, I put in there the road improvements. We will remove, a lot of that hillside material that's not native land that's left there. That we think most of that was pushed off from the substation when they flattened out the area for the substation. It looks like that was pushed out into that area. So this isn't a native area that we're looking to, to regrade. Plus the city, at some future point would have to regrade it anyway for the future Canyon Road realignment. There's been some talk about the Canyon Road and the Indian Trailhead connection that was brought up in the comment. We've addressed that in our engineering plans. We would raise Canyon Road a little bit. That would correct the angle that's there. It would improve the access for everyone who uses that road already. So that's in there as well. Gas, I know we don't usually talk about gas in the city, but gas is pretty much like water. This is a dead zone for natural gas. There's a 4-inch line that's pretty much the same place as the water line. There's already low pressure in that area. And so by looping it, that would fix that. Google Fiber, same thing. There's no Google Fiber. They said they put that in. I propose as part of my request here to deed over to the city the Bonneville Shoreline Trail line that's here, or Indian Trailhead right here. That was something we're going to do. My wife and I live by the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. We feel like it's a great amenity. It's one reason I show that on there. It's a pretty big feature. There's a difference between driving to a trail and coming home at the end of the day, throwing your keys on the counter, grabbing your dog, your bike, someone else, and walking out your door and being on a trail. We felt like that was a feature that we would have in this location that most locations don't have. Also, in conjunction with the project, we would fix I was under the impression when I started that nobody liked the current state of the project. It doesn't look good. It was, again, it was just kind of abandoned in the middle. No remediations happened afterwards. We can hydro seed the whole area here. In the tan areas, the cut that's already there. There won't be any more cutting back. There's no more gravel to remove. Doesn't make sense to remove any more gravel. So anyway, the whole hillside would be reseeded. Obviously, there'd be lots of landscaping that would go in around the building, and the trail that we proposed to go up, we could landscape along that, kind of get some native vegetation starting to be reestablished in that part of the mountain as well. Just talking about the project itself a little bit, I put this in here. This was kind of it took a while to come up with an idea and a direction to go on the property and what would fit. The parking was always an issue here. It ended up between the parking and the slope. The best way to deal with that would be a double layer underground parking garage. So you can see they can access from down below and also more from the surface there. This creates a lot of covered parking. So it is an expensive feature to put in, but it creates a lot of covered parking. That's why I've always thought that this would be a condo project, not apartments. If you're buying a condo, then you want somewhere to park your car. You're not willing to park your car out for the, however many years you're going to be there, versus an apartment is more transitory. So I've always pictured this as a condo. I named it a condo project. I know there's a demand for that. I found out more recently how interested Provo City is in condos and ownership. So that's why I'm proposing it. There was a note in here from Aaron that, anyway, a note that, that I hadn't made any guarantees of that. I don't know how to do that. So maybe that's something I would do. To get an FHA approved financing anyway, you have to be majority owner occupied. That's 50% anyway, would be required just for individuals to get financing, to have access to FHA backed financing on the project. I put in here the aging graph. Utah's population is aging. I think this part of the city, the county is probably ahead of the curve on this just because it's been established longer. And in talking with other people too, we all felt there'd be demand for this project. People, as they age out of their single family homes, they may look for somewhere like this where they can go and live and not have to worry about taking care of their home, their yard. Could be a smaller space for them as well. So adds more pictures. You guys saw that already. This is the underground layout. Again, I mentioned the parking. To me, it's really the parking that pushes this to be more of a condo project because of the expense of the parking garage, but also that amenity. You know, tenants would be able to come into lobbies in the parking garages and take elevators up to their floors. Again, to me, that's, you know, helps more people who are moving out of single family homes. I'm not proposing that it just be a, you know, 55 and older community, because there's lots of other people that fit into this category as well that would be interested in a first home, cheaper housing in this area, people who can't afford single family homes in this area of Provo. This would be something for them. That's what I got.
All right, thank you. I'm sure we have lots of questions.
Great.
Let's just go into it. Yeah, Jeff.
Thank you. This is a great presentation. Just a few clarifying questions. Can you speak a little bit more directly to why this kind of like larger 66 unit project versus the 14 to 16 units or 12 to 16 that you could just do without any planning commission involvement at all?
Yeah, great question. So I go back here just to the infrastructure improvements that happen. Everything here has to happen, whether it's 66 units, 100 units, 4 units. And so there's significant cost to develop this site. And so putting 12 units here is just not financially reasonable. If that's the zoning, that's the current zoning is 12 units, it's basically making the property undevelopable because of these costs. Until the city comes in and pays for, you know, the improvements here, it wouldn't make sense to develop the property to 12 units.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Couple other just small questions, not super important, but just, so did I hear you correctly to say that these units you plan to make them for sale? They're not rental units?
That's been my intent in the design work. And I'm willing, I don't know the mechanism to do that. I know the city's interested in that, but yes, that is the plan. And again, I feel like the design makes the most sense for something like that as well. And as I've spoken to people, again, if you're building apartments, you know, you build something different than this. This is the area here supports it, I feel like, as well. This is an area that's nicer. It's a nicer part of Provo. It's by the canyon, just the neighborhood it's in. I feel like you can build something nicer in this area. And so that's the way I've drawn it up.
Yeah. And then kind of maybe a direct question, but if you're willing to answer, why come forward even though you know the city's recommending against this given the concerns with sewage?
Excellent question. You know, it was only 2 weeks ago that I found out about that. I originally heard about it back in January when I first submitted, but at that time, Aaron and Bill Pepperone, they told me those comments weren't appropriate. They were taken off of the comments from city staff. So then I went back and kept designing and working. And so by the time I found out about this, it was all done. I mean, it's, you know, the engineer's been paid, the architects have been paid, you know, everything's been done. I've been working on it for years. And so for me, I'm like, well, I'm going to go to the last 2 meetings at least. And if nothing else, get some feedback to me would be useful at this point. Is the only issue sewer? To me, that's a good thing to know. Is that the one issue? Besides that, does everyone else want it to happen? Or are there other issues to be aware of? So to me, that'd be useful too.
Sure.
Okay.
Go
So
ahead.
in the spirit of that last comment of feedback, it's not necessarily going to be relevant to me at all and how I, you know, what my opinion on this ultimately, but what do you see the price per unit being roughly? Do you have any projections on that?
I haven't ordered an appraisal yet. In my mind, I have something around the $500,000 mark. You can see there's a variety. We planned it with a variety of units. The majority of the units are 2-bedroom. The second most are 3 bedrooms, so you're a little bit more for those. And then we do have 1-bedroom units in there as well, which I wanted to be in there just to have some variety in the price that you could do. There's not as much demand and interest for a 1-bedroom unit, so we only have 8 of them. We do have 4 that were.
Yeah, can you go back to that slide with the unit count? There we go.
There's 4 1-bedroom plus a study. Those would be in the corner in this area here. It's hard to get another window in there. But a lot of people who buy a 2-bedroom unit are not going to use the second bedroom anyway. It might be an office or storage place or something else anyway. So we figured that would be appropriate.
Thank you.
What's the total parking? I see required parking is 140, and then here you have 108 parking stalls, and then there's also surface parking.
Yeah, it's 140. Here I just called out underground, just to show that the vast majority of people who live here will be parking in secured underground places. That's like 1.6 underground parking stalls per unit. So most everyone who lives here will be underground.
I have a question. You mentioned you'd wondered about doing a higher density zoning. What would be the main impediments to that? Is it because you think planning commission wouldn't approve it? Was it discouraged by development staff or constraints on the land?
Here's the ironic part is when I went to the neighborhood meeting, I had 72 units drawn up. And everyone was worried about me putting in more. And now by the time I got here, I'm at 66. That declined just because we wanted to make sure that the building would accommodate the future curve in the road. And so we had to chop off the end of the building so that there'd be enough access with the appropriate slope to come up to it. So no, I'm trying to make it as efficient as possible. I feel like we've used it as efficiently as possible. I don't know that you could get more land here unless you get more. There's maybe another third of an acre to the west in between this project and University that if, depending on the future design of the intersection there, that may become available if they want to swap. Last year I made that offer to UDOT. I said, hey, I'll give you this property over here that you need for the swoop. And then, I want a little bit of property here and I can design my building more efficiently. But until UDOT does the design, they're not willing to swap, which they may be doing. They're out there doing stuff. Are they doing a design?
Just so everyone can hear, they are doing a survey right now, and they'll be working on the design through the summer and probably winter, possibly building part of some improvements next summer. So it wouldn't be what you showed on the map, but it would be a signal of some sort, probably a partial signal.
I have a question related to that. I know you can't guarantee anything because UDOT's its own entity with its own thing, but I know some cities, they try and coordinate infrastructure improvements when there's UDOT already doing work in there. Does UDOT going in there and doing work accelerate any sewer improvements?
Not the ones he needs.
Okay.
I have connection under the road though. There's already a culvert there. You can just stick a pipe through it, and it's harder than that. But as far as running pipe under the road, that's about as easy as it gets.
We do partner with UDOT all the time, though. We accelerate things and move stuff around to do the things that are necessary for those types of installation.
Can I ask a question while I still have you up here? Why is it so expensive to add a new pipe? Is it just because it's running underneath University Avenue and so you have to rip up the road and redo the road?
Oh, so
that main pipe that we were looking at earlier.
So where we need to do improvements to that main line, we have to tear out the old pipe and put a bigger pipe in. So we're basically starting completely over with putting in a new line, a larger line.
And is the majority of the cost come from the pipe itself or from digging it up in a costly way?
The road, putting the pipe
the road,
in,
got it.
Putting it all back and paving it again.
Yeah, makes sense.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Maybe Mr. Dayway here and the applicant, on page 4 of the second staff report, Sandy, I don't know if we can look at that image, but I didn't see any overlay of the forecasted swoop at that entrance, so I'm trying to visualize what that interchange is going to look like with your proposed access, with the access, Indian Hills Access Road, Trailhead Access, and Canyon Road.
Yes.
Right.
This, well, yeah, that swoop, but then
Keep
is there
going.
something that overlays it on Aaron's staff report number 2?
Keep going.
That's actually pretty close right there. What does the interchange look like as it connects with all of this?
I can show you that. So, so this is the current access that we'd propose right now. You can see we're leaving this open here, but we would grade this down, and you'd have basically the rough grade of the future road that would go in here.
Mm-hmm.
This right here changes a little bit. This was a design that was done a little earlier on. If I go back to here, you can see how, that'd be basically right here is where that road is. So the building could be built right now with this in mind, and then the straight road here. So when this road did go in the future, it would all line up and work.
So that is your access right there where it says begin temporary access connection. That would be, and that says permanent access to site.
Well, to be fair, we didn't talk much about this right here. This was driven by the engineer. I would just ignore this part for right now.
Do you want to go back to your layout? Yeah, right here. So
Andrew, that north part would remain the same, and the only change would be that south road would tie into the new interchange that would have a big radius coming around.
So Canyon Road turns into this radius that crosses where that proposed drive is.
Yes.
And then tees into University.
Yeah, this stays the same. So this starts curving right here.
Okay. And so what is the access to the proposed development look like in that situation?
It looks like that other drawing that we were right there. So if you see that, that very north end or left side of the drawing, that's that parking lot. Oh, sorry.
To David's for making.
Yeah.
So this area up here, if you can see the pointer, that's the same access coming in, but instead of going straight to the south, it'll tee in to this new Canyon Road. This would be Canyon Road realigned right here, coming to a 90-degree intersection with University Avenue, and this would be a 4-way.
Right.
And it's a rather expensive intersection.
Right.
So anyway, that's the idea.
When is that happening?
We've been told by UDOT that part of it, the cheap part, I suppose, would be next summer. Not this summer, but in a year from now.
2025.
Yeah.
Once that's done, this is complicated, I understand. 2 questions here. Would we normally have a traffic study done to understand what that looks like? And then 2, trying to forecast, once that's done, would we see more traffic on Canyon Road, and would that impact that? Like what does that look like?
We're forecasting that Canyon Road would remain very similar.
Right.
And in growth with what it's doing right now.
Right.
This intersection would just accommodate what's there now and then future growth.
Right.
So, yeah.
And just to clarify, Mr. Dave, your concern was primarily with sewer, not traffic. Is that right?
Yeah. So I just got to give a shout out to David and his team. They have alleviated all of our concerns except one. So it's the sewer. And so they've done a fabulous job of designing their project to fit in the site and accommodating the future road realignment for the intersection. And so if I had to surmise my engineering and public works comment, it would just be one comment: sewer. So
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Day.
Anyone else have questions for the applicant? Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
I just have one. You had mentioned about getting FHA funding, and that had a requirement for 50% homeowner occupancy.
Mhm.
So how long does that FHA requirement last? Is that just a guarantee during construction until 5 years out, or is
No,
it an
it's-
indefinite?
It's for each phase of the project that's closed. They won't close until 50% of the units are owner occupied. Typically, in a situation like this, a developer or a construction company might make each floor a phase, and that way, as soon as you get half of the units on a floor with buyers lined up that are going to occupy it, then you could close all of those, and then the rest of the units you could continue to sell.
So you could meet the requirement, and then a year later, everyone who was owner occupied could have rented their unit out, and it wouldn't matter anymore, right? I'm just like looking at the holes in that idea.
In the FHA. Yeah, because again, we're not talking about any.
It's not an
additional
eternal
requirements that
guarantee.
put on
It's until it's closed
it.
or at closure time.
Yeah, I think it's a continuing issue. If you want to maintain financing in there, the project would have to qualify for that. I'm not sure how it changes I'm not sure how FHA monitors that over time, though.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you that.
I know this.
They have a process to, and honestly, it's not a fun process. It's a reason there aren't more of these out there. It's just hard to do. But that's how you do it and go through it.
Okay. I'm just trying to anticipate loopholes, see how much we can rely on an idea. Thank you.
I have a question. Is there a plan to have, because it's a condo, if there's going to be like rules about owner occupancy in your view, generally in like bylaws or I don't know, CCNRs, do they do that?
There can be. I'm open to that. I hadn't put that stuff in place. This was the intention. I don't know if that would change things here. If I say, yes, we're going to do it, then I'll go and do the work and do it. And if planning commission wants to approve subject to me putting that together, then I will put it together.
I'll say this, it could, but as a planning commission, we can't approve your project contingent on something like that. That's something you as the owner have to proffer to the city, in the form of a development agreement where you would have owner occupied standards and rules, but that's something we can't really ask. Anyone else have questions? I don't think so it sounded, just to summarize, it sounded like the constraint to higher density was more dictated by the land, the limitations on the land and infrastructure.
Yeah.
So even if those the land just can't hold more, you couldn't build up if you wanted to.
No, it's very steep. If I go back to the original pictures here. Oh, this one fell asleep. Oh, right there. Yeah, it's very steep there. So there's, I own about 7.5 acres total, and it's about 2 acres is the only place you can build.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
Danielle, did you mean up by like higher
up,
floors,
like if
more
you did
floors?
like a 12-story building or something like that. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Thanks for
I guess the zoning that we're asking for doesn't permit that. We have to be an average of 55 feet per facade, so that's a limiting factor as well. That wouldn't be permitted.
I don't think I have anything else unless any of the other commissioners want to bring something up. All right, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and open this up for the public comment portion of the meeting. I see some faces I don't recognize, so what I'm going to ask is if you could line up on the front row. You'll come up. You'll have 2 minutes to bring up your concerns, state your name and where you live, and please let all of you, if you're, don't be shy about commenting. This is really the one time you get a chance other than letters. We do read all the letters, and we appreciate and rely on your input. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, district chair? Yeah. If the district chair's here, you might be the first district chair we've had up here and like since districts were created. You'll go ahead and have 3 minutes. Any other public comment, people wanting to comment, we'll give them 3 minutes as well.
Cool.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I am Sharon Mehmet, your neighborhood district chair for this area. You do have in your staff report the reference to our neighborhood meeting, which at the time I wanted to bring, and that's the only reason I'm standing up, is I wanted to bring up a couple of things. The project was presented to the neighbors as a high density project. And if you look at the vote, you'll see that most people were against that. The other option that we gave for our, I shouldn't say vote, our poll, was a medium density. And presented with those two options, people preferred the medium density. But what was brought up to me after the meeting, which won't be in your report, was several neighbors came up to me and said, you realize our other options are that the parcel is purchased as agriculture. And one of the options is that it stays agriculture, and that the general plan calls out agriculture and single family homes in that neighborhood. So those should have been put before the neighborhood as a poll, and I think we would have gotten a little different result, but we weren't thinking along those lines. We were presented with two options and didn't think to go further. So I appreciate that he answered the question about the zoning change. I know he mentioned something about tried to take notes to keep this brief. The nicer neighborhood is, in my opinion, because we appreciate the general plan calling out single family homes and an appreciation for agriculture and open space, which a high rise, even a smallish one, isn't what we envisioned when we moved into the neighborhood. And I would call out that so you're being presented with an Arbors, the pro zone of Arbors on the avenue, which is not what the neighborhood saw at all. I appreciate that it brings down the density, but it actually brings up the height. And so I would ask either you or staff whether it calls out 4 stories specifically, but it actually brings the height up to 60 feet. I didn't know if the 2-story underground parking is included in that 60 feet, or if that is just the 4 living stories, where that gets us in this, because this actually gets taller. So I know my neighbors wouldn't be happy about that. But it does bring the density down somehow to 24 units per acre. So again, if he's asking for a proposal to change the whole 4 acres, we're looking at more than the 66 units could be allowed for what he's asking. And again, I know my neighbors would be concerned about that. The Arbors actually says as its purpose, sorry, wrong glasses. Is to establish, provide high-density multi-family residential facilities located near other selected high-density areas as designated in the general plan. Well, there's no high-density designated in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. I probably didn't finish the rest of the read up on that. When your time is up, you'll hear it ding just like that, and the microphone will be muted. Each person may make 1 comment. If we have questions, we'll invite you to come back to the microphone at that time. This time is for comments only. If you have questions about an item, please speak with staff, like Mr. Ardmore or Mr. Day, privately. Yeah, let's continue with public comment. Any other citizens want to make a comment? Okay. Go ahead. I see someone getting a. Please state your name and where you live.
Sure, thanks. I appreciate what you do. My name's Steve Turley. I own the property that's immediately to the east of this.
Yeah, just put the microphone up. Yeah, there you go.
Steve Turley. I'm a resident of Provo, and I own the property immediately adjacent to 7 some odd acres immediately to the east and south of this parcel here. A couple of things. I think this is a tough piece. I think it's going to take the best and brightest minds that we can actually collaborate with. The developer obviously has tried to do his part. Provo, UDOT, everybody's going to have to collaborate, or those going to stay as it is. I don't really speak in favor, because I think that the elephant in the room is the sewer, and that's just an environmental thing that I think Provo needs to take a hold of. But you guys get to make some decisions, and our other decision makers get to do others. But to leave this area up here without utilities is, I think it's horrible planning. As planning commissioners, I would invite, urge, beg for someone to try to initiate some kind of plan for infrastructure in this area. It's Provo's ground. They annexed it with the expectation that there would be utilities and services brought into here, and it's utility-less. Years ago, I made a donation to the city and put that sewer line underneath University Avenue, gratis, just for free, just because I knew that we'd need it someday, and we don't want to spend that extra money down the road to have to dig University Avenue up. And so on my dime, we put that sleeve underneath so that we don't have to do that boring or that trenching underneath University Avenue. It's stubbed to both sides, and that sewer line simply has to be inserted through there. But someone's got to connect both ends to something usable. But as far as this concept plan, it would be very helpful for those of us that own property up there to have clarity as to the stacking distance on those intersections. If you notice, Mr. Bragonje's proposal showed that the access to his property came to the south on that Indian Trail Road, and the stacking distance between his access and Canyon Road was very small. It's the only property that he has, but clarity on that would be appreciated. The stacking distance, if you remember from the UDOT's plan, if you notice, imagine taking a left-hand turn movement off of University Avenue to the east. If you notice, immediately after the right-of-way line was the left-hand turn pocket. And you can just imagine how fun that would be to try to get your tail end off of University Avenue if that stacking distance happened to be full, as everybody's on their way home from church, something like that. But by doing that, those kind of concept plans, I just wish Provo would take kind of a more initiative in doing that. And then finally, I believe there's also a trail easement in place for the Indian Trail Road up there. So anyway, I hope we can encourage our city planners to have a little foresight, do something in that area. Otherwise, we're all going to sit and wait. So thank you for your.
Thank you. Just quickly to respond to that, make sure you appear at city council meetings on this matter as well, because I think they need to hear that, the council members. Any other members of the public? Okay, with that, with no further comments, we'll now close the public comment. The commission will now have a discussion and entertain straw polls and motions. Once a motion has been made, it will need to be resolved before moving on or making a new motion. Following the vote, we'll announce the result. If there are not enough votes, we'll announce the results and continue discussing. Yeah, commissioners, do anyone want to start with some initial comments?
I would like to say I think this is a really good plan for the challenges of this place where it is. It doesn't seem, I mean, I know the neighbors have strong feelings about the height, but it seems like the height's still smaller than the hill. Like it's not projecting above ground level for where you are. I think that's a positive thing. I also like that it connects to the trails, and it's good that eventually there would be potentially that intersection so that people could go over to the trail up the canyon and down into Provo via bike or walking, and maybe over to the Riverwoods even through active transport. So that's good. It is a bit isolated otherwise, which can be hard in terms of like it's cut off from almost everything else unless you're in a car, except for those few ways to get places. But yeah, I mean, I think this is the kind of housing we need, and it's kind of painful that the sewer issue is standing in the way, because this is definitely needed. This is something I've talked about a lot, that I would love my neighborhood in Grandview to have something like this, where the folks who are selling their homes because they can't maintain them can stay in their ward. So we don't have all our older folks moving out of our ward or out of our neighborhood. All the grandmas and stuff, we want to keep them around. So I think this is a nice opportunity for that. So yeah, I think this is the kind of thing that the city needs to plan for sure.
Yeah, I'll jump in if you don't mind. Gosh, I wish you'd brought this project a year ago, before some of these other projects were permitted. Because for me, it would have been a hands up, because you're one of the few developers that has come forward voluntarily with a home, owner occupied housing, which is something that's on all of our minds. It's on the city council's mind. It's on the mayor's mind. Gosh. And from what I gather, the only impediment as far as the city is concerned is the sewer. Not traffic, not building height, not parking. They're not asking for any parking reductions. Yeah. Commissioner Hill.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of those same sentiments. I think you wanted feedback, right? And I think if it wasn't for the sewer, personally, I can't speak for everyone else, but I would vote for it very, very readily. You're giving a lot as far as infrastructure coming in. I love the variety of unit sizes. One of the things, echoing what some of the others have said, this is probably right now the most important unit type we need in this city. They're owner occupied and they're higher density, but they have larger footprints with 2-3 bedrooms. We see a lot of 1 bedrooms coming through, and these have larger ones, and I love that. It's got good access to university, which is going to alleviate congestion concerns in the area, and it's separated from the rest of the neighborhood. So I get the sentiment about, hey, we have this nice neighborhood, we don't want that interrupted with higher density. But for me, this is off the side next to a power substation and a huge boulevard, right? And so it doesn't disrupt the neighborhood. It's also against a big hillside, and I think you actually did a great job on those elevations to make it look kind of naturally fitting in with that hillside, which I also really like to see. I don't think single family is feasible on this land from the things that the developer pointed out. Just kind of the space issues and the steep hillsides and things like that. There's not a good way to get a good neighborhood feel in there. I love that you were willing to look into future infrastructure changes and how this could fit into that and modify things to account for that in the future. We've also seen some projects that come in and just kind of ignore that. And now we're thinking, oh, if that gets changed, we got to tear something out. And that's not good either. So I think there's a lot of great things. I would actually recommend here, since sewage is the thing, and as we pointed out, some of those projects maybe wouldn't even have to be done. 3 in particular, so P16 I don't think needs to be done. As David Day said, it's off to the side. It's only a portion of P18 that would need to be done. And I actually looked, and all of the permitted uses except for one are south of Center Street. And so I'm wondering if P15 is really a bottleneck at this point. And so I would recommend maybe we consider continuing this and asking staff to go back and reevaluate what would it really cost the city to get the sewage to where we could get a development like this in here. I think it's important to set the precedence that developers, if you're going to come and provide home ownership opportunities in these smaller units that can help lower our prices, et cetera, create an alternative type for our retirees, whatever, that we're really going to look at this hard and try to make it work. So I'd like to see that reevaluate and see what the cost really would be on that.
I agree with that completely. Everything you said.
It's a great suggestion.
Let me see if I can follow my notes that are written all over the place. I feel like we need to deny this just because of logistics, or continue it as Mr. Hill suggested, that approving this at this point is not an option. I absolutely love the project. I agree with Mr. Hill. The geographic segregation makes it seem appropriate. That having been said, I hesitate to rezone because the general plan does say agriculture residential. And I always hesitate to jump in on a rezone just because it's a good idea, because the property owner did buy it with a certain zoning. It's not like we're taking it right away. They're hoping to get something more from it. And so that's just something I feel I should mention, that's real. But once again, those two things compete with each other, because as you look back at it, you think maybe this is a place where change would be better because of the parameters of geography. So I would recommend that the developer continue working for the infrastructure improvements. Maybe that would take collaborating with adjacent landowners who have similar desires to get the infrastructure over there. This is just getting out my ideas. I wanted to also give some feedback to the developer. I'm worried about the price per unit. I know that real estate's expensive right now, but part of the general plan goal is not just to have home ownership, but affordable home ownership, and $500,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment. That feels iffy to me. I would love it if that's what everyone's houses are worth, but I know that a lot of that cost is because it's going to be expensive to build this. I really appreciate everything that you did to come into this with information instead of a whole bunch of what ifs. It feels like really thoughtful planning, and I appreciate that. I love the connection to the trail. I like how the project is nestled back to the hill. I love the diversity of unit sizes. One thing that jumped out at me in the renderings is the parking lot between the landscaping and the street view. Something that we've talked a lot about in the last couple of years is not having our parking be road facing. So, and that's tricky because then you're hiding it behind and there's trade-offs, and then the building stands out more instead of being nestled in with the hill. But I'm going to throw that out there as a aesthetic thing that somebody might have a problem with. You can always landscape around it so it's not so visible and it's more aesthetically pleasing, and the 2 underground floors of parking is fantastic. So I'm certainly not complaining about the way the parking is. I'm just putting that out as something that's been mentioned in the past that people don't want to see. And since this is a very visible area in the city as you're coming towards Provo Canyon, that might be something you want to consider. I think that was it as far as feedback and discussion ideas.
I have a question if anyone knows it off the top of their head, but I'm totally blanking. Well, one thing I do want to say though is I actually agree with the point you made about pricing. It's like, I know it is what it is with the construction costs and projects need to pencil, but this is something that is a concern. It's in the general plan. The concern of this commission is just having more options that are lower price for people who can't afford the median home price. Just a small point of feedback, but I love the project for everything that's been said. If it were not for the sewer issue, I'd be very much inclined to support it.
I won't rehash what everybody else has said. I also like the project for a lot of these same reasons. I think it's well conceived. The issue with the sewer, because we don't control the budget and we don't know what that looks like, I feel like that's not our place to say, let's go ahead and do this, because there is going to be an impact. I'm a little surprised that we only found out about it 2 weeks ago. So that maybe it's wishful thinking, but some thought that maybe going back, like Commissioner Hill suggested, and seeing if there's some creative way to look at this in terms of staging these other projects that are already entitled. We have to honor those entitlements. I understand that. We certainly want to make sure that our infrastructure is running smoothly. So if that is in fact the bottleneck, that might be the case. In which case, I think the city council would have to decide whether or not there's other creative ways to look at funding or developing that sooner, or whatever that timeline is. The only other thing is still the access piece, just trying to understand, and again, as it's been mentioned, UDOT is doing their thing in their survey, but in that area, there's only a few things that you can do to connect everything together. So I think it's what's been proposed or what's been looked at is probably pretty reasonable, probably pretty accurate. UDOT's had their hand in it, trying to understand what the access is from the property to that connection. And I don't know this, but what that distance is, like it was brought up in public comment, like what is the distance from entrance to that streetway, given what that intersection is going to look like, and having that look, having a traffic engineer look at that and make sure that it's within our standards. I think that would be really important to just confirm that, yeah, we're good with that. I know Mr. Day said, hey, he liked everything. Sewer was the only problem, but because we didn't have any demonstrable information about what that looks like and what the requirement is, I think we'd want to know that.
I actually think that's a bonus, that because sewer is delaying the beginning of anything here, it would give time to see what happens with UDOT's plans and be able to plan. I think it's important for the developer to have an idea of what would be acceptable here, but also for them to collaborate better so that the plans can be really compatible and be done well.
I remember my question. Does anyone, maybe I should ask it earlier, but the gravel pit, was that a permitted use of this land? And they got in trouble, that's why I got.
I don't know what you're thinking, but what I'm thinking is, can you just get agricultural, raise it as a gravel, and then turn it into a different kind of residential use?
So if you ask anybody back in 2018, that was an unfortunate grading permit that was approved. That's probably sufficient.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The main reason why I asked was just because I agree. I think the trick with this property is, I totally agree with what was said earlier. It's going to be super hard to put single family homes here. It's just not, the market won't work. It's going to hard to fit without moving a bunch of issues. Now we're talking about hillside issues, and it's we're having a Chaz. I think this is the perfect project for this location. And the current location is a massive eyesore. I drive by it all the time. And so what I wanted to check is are we, by saying no to this project, are we incentivizing the owner to go back to mining gravel? And no, we're not. But anyway, so that's what I was asking.
Yeah, great point. And while I'm up here, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
There's been talk of continuance, which I understand. But I would caution on a recommendation of continuance. The budget is the budget. We can look at it in more detail. We can have Public Works look at it in more detail in the 3 weeks between Planning Commission and City Council to have a more detailed answer on what those numbers look like. However, if it's 10 years out, it's 10 years out. Continuing a Planning Commission to have this item in front of you again, I don't think gets us anywhere. It just delays the applicant in further feedback.
I just want to find a way to make this work.
I totally understand.
Because I'm wondering, is there a creative solution? Is there a private public partnership? I just wonder, with 2 weeks, did we give the applicant enough time to problem solve this?
I get that. And I think Public Works has made it pretty clear in their report. They can look at it at a more detailed way in the next 3 weeks before the council, if that's what you want to recommend. But I really don't know if a continuance gets us anywhere.
Yeah, I'm fine having them look at it more and then have that go to city council with just kind of our opinions on that. But as David Day said, P16 shouldn't even be listed. So that's already a problem in my mind. That tells me this was rushed. It was not carefully looked at. All of the things cited that were already permitted are actually south of Center Street. So I'm asking, is P15 really a bottleneck for this one, or just potentially in the future? You know what I mean?
Right.
I have a feeling that that cost might come down significantly. And David Day also said that the city moves things around all the time to get things to work. And if it's only $2 million or $1 million to make that work, I think there's a lot of potential solutions that become available. We should look at that.
I agree. But I would also tend to agree with Commissioner South that the council can look at that as well. That we do have 3 weeks between the hearings.
Yeah, and I'm
for these
happy
types
to
of
send it to
studies.
them with that
Yeah.
and have the study be done in between, but I do want that.
That's probably enough said for me. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I guess two things I would say was one, like, we could, we've done polls before, like straw polls before, just to give indications on some of our concerns and how many people share those concerns. And then the second thing being, like, in the last year, University Avenue has been under a lot of change. To me, it feels like we've had a project come on that corridor just about every other commission hearing. So it's been rapidly changing with projects getting entitled. That's why I say if this had been, a few months ago, it might have not even been a concern yet. So anyways, Commissioner South and then Commissioner Jensen.
I just want to make a comment on the agricultural nature of this zone. Like, it may be zoned agricultural, and maybe there was an unfortunate incident with a grading permit, but I don't see that being a sticking point. Like, that is not agricultural land in my view, and what we're trying to preserve or whatever, that's not, I don't think that's an important issue here. And with the height, I agree with Commissioner DeSoto that, I mean, the neighbor to that is the substation. I just don't see height being an issue either. So while I can appreciate those generally, like, those are things we want to pay attention to. And I think this commission is really concerned about that. In this case, I don't think either one of those hold sway.
I agree. Commissioner Jensen, go ahead.
I just want to point out that this isn't the first area of the city to have to wait for infrastructure improvements to be made before they could develop widely, not wildly. We don't want wild development. The whole southwest part of Provo has sort of been holding out for sewer and things for a long time. So though I appreciate someone saying, hey, it's our right to have infrastructure, it takes time. And so that's just something to think about. My second question is for Mr. Ardmore. I was trying to get you before you sat down. Is it helpful for us as we discuss this to make a motion to approve item number 2, to send a message that we really like item number 2, even though we might deny item number 1 on infrastructure? Or would we deny both on infrastructure? And like, how do we vote in such a way that it sends our good thoughts along with our concerns at the same time?
That's the fun thing with concept plan applications, right? They always have to come back with a full project plan set. So a concept plan does kind of give information towards the zone change, and that's what it's there for. We developed the concept plan so people wouldn't have to spend the whole budget on the full civil and architectural set to find out if the zone change is approved. That being said, it's totally within your purview to approve a concept plan. It doesn't do much without the zone change, right, other than maybe give that indication of preference.
Is there a time limit on those? I know with the project plan approval that they have like a year or something that they have to actually start. So if we give concept plan approval, is that indefinite until they get to project plan phase, or is there also a time limit on that?
So yeah, it would still fall into that same code that says that approval lasts 12 months if there's no indication of advancing the application any part of that proposal forward in 12 months. Then it's starting over. It's coming in with another concept plan.
And it's still pending the condition, which is the zone change. So there's absolutely nothing dangerous that can happen if nobody approves the zone change.
You're correct.
Thank you.
And just like, yeah, oh, you could sit down. Thanks. No, I'm not, yeah. That would just be, for us, it would be, for me, I'd see the purpose being indicating to future planning commission members. I imagine staff would look it up and give it in there, because they usually do a little history of the property, but I'd hope there'd be a comment saying, yeah, the concept plan was approved by, X number vote. But it wasn't, the zone change wasn't approved. Anyways.
So let me just toss out some things here. So item number 1, do we as a commission feel like we're okay with the zone change? If there weren't the sewer parameters, would we vote yes? Because I feel like that is also going to help us make a recommendation for item number 2. So I'm saying if we were, I think we should still say no, given the physical constraints. But are we sending the wrong message by saying we would vote for it, but we wouldn't,
I suppose what if there was a motion like I move that we recommend denial based
on the
solely on the sewer infrastructure, and then there's a vote on that.
Okay. I just had another question. A couple of us have concerns with what the general plan says, and simultaneously have concerns that maybe this is just mistakenly agricultural due to the geography of the area. Like, I feel like there's a very distinct line there. So part of me says this should never have been agriculture because it's right on University Avenue. We want to have higher density next there. We don't want single family density. We've seen so many times where a single family neighborhood has been fought for on University Avenue, and then no one wants high density next to it because it's next to their neighborhood when there shouldn't have been single family there in the first place because it's an arterial through the city. And so what we do here helps to build an order of things for the future. So do we really feel like it shouldn't be agriculture? Do we really feel like change is warranted? And if so, that should give us impetus to also think about how we feel about the density.
One comment on that is I actually lived in the Arbors. That's when I moved back to Provo after my BYU days. And this is very congruent in my opinion. It's just right down the road from the Arbors. It's a very, very similar development. This is just a lot nicer.
The Arbors is the really narrow one right across from Riverwoods.
Yeah, exactly. It's those
just
condos.
Like
and they're
very
also
thin, right
they're
next to
also
the mountain.
owner occupied, and I mean there's some of them are rented, but a lot of the owners live in those units and they're owned by individuals, and so
Yeah, I don't mind doing a poll on that or some type of vote on that. I'm hesitant to comment on agricultural things just because I don't grow things.
it could be
So
very good.
I don't know
sheep
what
raising
the uses. I'm not qualified to really say what the uses of.
We have
that
an
are.
agriculture expert here that might want to chime in on agricultural use there.
I'm no expert, but it certainly hasn't been used. Well, I don't know, maybe some of it is higher up is used. I don't know whether there's grazing of cattle up there or sheep. But this part right here that we're looking at certainly is not being used for agriculture, nor has been used for agriculture as far as I remember. So.
I just thought of another thing too. When you look at the intensity of land use, I know that the zone that's being asked for allows for 66 units. But when you consider that most of the property is not going to have structures on it, that's, if you do the math over the 7 acres total, that feels to me like it's more like 10 units per acre, which is barely above. Am I completely off base here? That's a very low density.
Yeah, that's what we were saying earlier.
It's kind of what we talked about with a cluster development where it's closer. So is it 7 acres total? Is it only 4 acres total? Like, what are we looking at as a real number? Because this is kind of what we talk about in our single family neighborhoods, where if they give us a whole bunch of green space, we'll be fine with 4,000 square foot lots because they're actually the same number of units per acre.
And I think that's what Mr. Bragonje was trying to allude to, point out during his presentation of creating the lot 2, separating that from the hillside and from the entry lot, is really defining that area that should be zoned and counted for density. Because that was a concern of the neighborhood, that he would use the total acreage to get the density up on the buildable portion. So I think he's trying to get to that by creating these different lots.
So if he were to just rezone it to like a residential agriculture or something that gives a higher density and rezone the whole area, then could he cluster like that in a zone like, if he rezoned all of his parcels, could he cluster it so that we knew that the other parcels could not also be rezoned and developed?
I think it's safer to do what he was proposing and just to
Give it a higher density and a smaller.
just to zone the portion that's he intends to build on and keep the rest, the underlying the agricultural zone. I think that's probably the safest way to do it, so somebody can't come back later and use that acreage.
Okay, my understanding too is that a pro zone is a like project specific zone, and so this is the first time I've seen someone try and rezone one as a project specific zone.
There are two other cases in my time here, in the last 15 years, that a pro zone has been used in a second location. It's very difficult because they're written
very
so
specific.
But
it's not abnormal and it works.
It works in this case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Just throwing this out there because no one said it. I also really like the applicant saying that he would deed the Bonneville Trail access to. I think more development should do that. So where are we landing? Are we gonna? Should we? I think we should do some motions.
Yeah, I'm ready to entertain any motions.
Well, on the table we have that we deny the concept plan with the note that it's only for sewer, or that we approve the concept plan but then deny the rezone. Those are kind of the two things we're considering, right?
Can I suggest we do a couple straw polls that we can add as concerns or thoughts? The first one would be, are we okay that it's in the plan as single family homes and agriculture? Are we okay with that change? And then the second one would be, if it wasn't for sewer, would we approve this?
Okay, let's.
Let me restate what Mr. Hill said to make sure that we're all understanding it. Given that the general plan designates this as agriculture or residential, would we be okay rezoning it, this whole parcel to the pro zone that he's asking for? Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Are we good with that? Go ahead and put that motion forward, Lisa. Or that's whole.
Okay, so
forward,
we're going to
Lisa.
have a little vote to send our feelings on to the city council about this. That despite the designation of agriculture and residential over this area in the general plan, we would feel comfortable rezoning it to this pro zone that has been requested.
Yes.
Are we saying that for any development, any situation? Like, I'm not quite sure I fully understand what you're talking about, because I look at this as being part and parcel with the second item. Like, we're taking them both together. So to try to say, hey, let's go ahead and rezone
For this
or whatever,
project.
for the purpose of this project, the way it's set up, like, I could see that, but I'm not prepared to just say, oh yeah, let's go ahead and rezone this.
What if-
no matter
I like
what.
that clarification.
What if we modified that question, just asked more, do we feel like this zone doesn't really fit the goal of the general plan to preserve agriculture and single family homes in this area because of its location and the steepness of the property?
Ms. Kendall had a question.
Well,
or
I think
comment.
what we heard before about how this developer has broken it up so that he's not including that other square footage, that's important to this. That makes it so that I feel comfortable with rezoning. But if you just rezoned it and then he sold the property to somebody else, now you're not guaranteed that anymore. So I do think you're right. They need to go together.
So
Yeah,
I
because
wonder if what we're talking about is giving some notes to city council, but then we're taking this at face value and addressing it like it's written. which-
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the way that the current plan is they're only rezoning a very tiny amount of the agriculture. So I don't really want to do a poll to suggest that this entire hillside
Yeah.
area.
I
is
agree.
not-
Right.
It's fair.
Also, Mr. Ardmore, I think we all would love to have the acreage and the maps reflect what the developer showed us so that it's an accurate reflection of what he's asking for instead of what's bigger here. So when it goes on to the city council or any other time, just to make sure that was clear.
And to be fair, we usually give you that content, that file, the file notes. In this case, with the sewer issue coming to light,
It changed.
it seemed like those were secondary details
Okay.
that we just didn't get to. So, but happy to provide that to the council.
Okay, so restating. As described in the parameters of this proposed project in item number 2, we would feel comfortable rezoning that property as requested because despite the general plan designation. Okay,
All in favor? Let's just go one by one.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Aye. That's unanimous, 8-0.
Okay.
Now, that was a straw poll, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's just
Not a motion.
Not a motion, just a
sending
straw poll.
information on to the administration that we like this idea enough to rezone that particular project property.
Okay, so then I would make a motion that we deny the request for a zone map amendment from the A15 agricultural zone to the Pro A10 zone for item number 1, and also deny item number 2, the concept plan approval based solely on the limits on sewer connections.
I think we have to just do one first and then do the other one.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I read that
So
at
it's the
beginning.
same motion
Just-
with just the different words.
Can we do one more straw poll real quick? I want to know for how many is the sewer the only concern that we have? I think that would be important information to send to city council.
I agree.
Aside from making sure we mentioned that they proffered the
ownership.
ownership issue.
Right.
Yeah, that's a big selling factor. And I also
Bonneville.
think that the UDOT improvements take away a lot of the other concerns that I might have had. If that intersection really does get redone, I think that a lot of the traffic and access and aesthetics and everything would kind of be swallowed up in that.
So given those two things, is the only remaining concern then sewage?
I'm not sure if yours captured my concern with the access, just making sure that we had an access plan that was in fact approved by our Public Works office that said, yeah, this does in fact work. Because I don't think that was in the package to the point that they looked at it and said, yeah, we've reviewed all this, it meets all of our requirements, standards, codes.
Yeah, I'm guessing again, the sewage issue probably kind of cut that off.
Yeah.
So do you want to include that in yours, or would that just be a no vote for Mr. South? Would we say sewage and access are our two concerns, or would we say sewage is our number one concern and Mr. South votes no because he
I
has
think
another one?
we could do a poll on each concern.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
So let's go with sewage.
So yeah, I move that we do a straw poll that the sewage is our only remaining concern, given that the owner has proffered a guarantee of home ownership.
Yeah, I'll second the poll on that. Let's vote.
Aye.
So do I vote no because
It's not
I
your
have the
only
other-
concern?
This is my only concern? Yeah, no.
I think I'm going to vote no as well, just for the same reason as Mr. South, that there's one more concern.
Aye.
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 Okay, so that's 6-2 poll. With the sewer being the only concern.
And then if you could just note that the two opposing votes were for the same reason, that's probably helpful information too.
Any other polls?
And to be clear, I think it just needs to be looked at, like have someone look at it. I think there's a reasonable chance that it's really easily accomplishable.
Yeah.
I just don't think anyone's looked at it yet. So.
Any other polls? Okay, let's consider the two items separately then. Any motions on the item number 1?
Okay, so motion, item number 1, that we recommend denial of the proposed rezone, map amendment from the A15 agricultural zone to the Pro A10 zone in order to construct the new 66-unit condo building on University Avenue, based on the limits on sewer connections for this property.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay,
I have a question about the motion.
Go ahead,
and
yeah.
So we're denying this and denying the
this is
concept
just
plan
the zone
later
plan.
too. I know, but I want to know. Yeah. Okay.
Just the zone.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item number 1's denied.
Recommended for denial.
Recommended for denial. 8-0. Item number 2.
I'm gonna throw this out there. I recommend that the planning commission approve the proposed concept plan for item number 2, David Bragonje request concept plan approval for a new 66 unit condo building in a proposed Pro A10 zone.
I'm actually comfortable with that radical idea.
Can I just ask though, we heard that it makes no difference for the city, but does it make a difference for the applicant? Is that okay with the applicant? I mean, because does it put him behind in any way? Like they have to make a whole new plan? Can't use the same plan later, or you know what I'm saying?
Well, I think let's be clear that, I mean, this dies on the vine, right? I mean, unless circumstances change in the next year with sewer, then the concept plan will.
Or a possible solution is reached between now and.
Or
basically just not requiring the applicant to come back through and get approval for the concept plan. So I think it's helpful.
Right. It's only good for 12 months.
But I think it could be helpful. Let's just say in the next 3 weeks, the developer figures out something with the city, they find a solution. Now it can move forward because the city council actually approves the zone change, not us. So that doesn't have to come back. And now this wouldn't have to come back either.
Well, why don't you do a motion and then recommend approval, and then with the encouragement to reach a resolution on sewer.
Is it okay to ask the applicant? If
I
they-
just feel like it
okay
gives
about
a measure of good faith. Like it eliminates further debate that's already been debated. If nothing happens in a year, then nothing happens in a year. But if in 5 years they want to come back with it, the general plan goals are still the same. You can refer to it and say, this was the feeling 5 years ago. Do we still feel this way? And you can jump ahead a few steps.
Yeah, I think it falls into the can't hurt, might help kind of
Yeah.
category.
Question to the applicant, do you want us to approve it? All right, there we go.
Yeah.
That was my question.
All right. So I'll reread my motion.
Yeah.
So I'd like to,
Hold on.
Sorry, really quick. This still have the question with the traffic though. Like if we approve that concept and it doesn't fit, what happens? We've already approved it and we find out that the way that it's lined out isn't going to fit.
Well, project plan will still have to be cleared with engineering and that will all be addressed.
That's fair.
Let me clear up a couple of things. So the concept plan is that it's just a concept. It doesn't give any type of right to anybody. It gives, what you're doing is giving an indication that you're supportive of it. This specific concept plan is still under staff CRC review. It's still going through that process. So there might be comments from staff still on that. In the end, the project plan that comes to you later is the one that matters. That's where it needs to be approved by staff before you see it, or conditioned that it gets approved by staff. So I just wanted to be clear, set expectations, right? That the concept plan approval really just is a feeler for the zone change and for the council, for the applicant.
That's fair. Okay.
all right, I'd like to make a motion that the Provo City Planning Commission approve the proposed concept plan for the 66 unit condo building in a proposed Pro A10 zone located approximately at 5610 North University Avenue.
Any further discussion on the motion?
I'll
Is there
I'll
on
second the motion.
There we go. Let's go ahead and vote.
Aye.
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 This is crazy.
Approval 8-0. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Thank you for your time.
I move that
For
we
your
adjourn.
patience. Second.
Aye.
All in favor, aye.
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 All right.